year's theme is Our Nurses, Our Future. The ICN president, Dr. Pamela Cipriano, has reminded us that as a profession, we need to learn from the lessons of the coronavirus pandemic and translate these into future actions that, open quotes, that ensure nurses are protected, respected, and valued, close quotes. So the aim of today's webinar is for nurses to reflect on how their scholarship has served this theme, which is Our Nurses, Our Future. So let us sit back, ladies and gentlemen, and hear the voices of nurses reflecting on this theme. I hope you will learn something from today's session as we anchor our future through clinical scholarship. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Emamali.
Thank you, Dr. Mshlongo, and thank you for all your support for this webinar. The program will unfold as we go along. It is very short in duration, but very intense, as we hope to share our experiences with you. The first presentation is by myself, so allow me to share my PowerPoint with you. Just a little background about what we are going to do today and the discipline's journey in clinical scholarship. I've titled it A Peek into the Clinical Scholar Persona, a work in progress by myself. Many of us equate celebrations with balloons and with gifts, but we at the discipline have chosen to celebrate by showcasing our journey in clinical scholarship. Simply because we believe that the changes that will emanate from clinical scholarship are indeed true gifts for clinical practice and humanity. So what then is clinical scholarship? For me, Boyer's 1990 sums up what I believe is clinical scholarship. It is a very workable definition in that it looks at the process of knowledge development and application within a discipline. So then, what is clinical scholarship not? Clinical scholarship is not clinical proficiency. Neither is it clinical research, although I must say that it inspires research. When we embark on a journey of clinical scholarship, we critique the evidences both in academia and clinical practice settings, integrate the evidence into all our teaching paradigms, be it with students, be it with patients, be it with families, and most especially, we collaborate with other interprofessional scholars. For me, clinical scholarship is foremost collaborative in its integration and its dissemination, and therefore, we see it as moving a very fragmented healthcare system to one that is coordinated, comprehensive, and most importantly, population-focused care. Clinical scholarship and evidence-based practice, we would ask ourselves, what is the difference? If I could say that clinical scholarship looks at all patterns of knowing and therefore embraces evidence-based practice, which is empiric practice. The focus of clinical scholarship is to critique interventions and knowledge that is obsolete, to explain patterns as well as exceptions, and to acknowledge the context of clinical practice, meaning acknowledge our patients and the users of our services as well as families. That all said and done, why clinical scholarship within the discipline of nursing KwaZulu-Natal? So within the discipline itself, we have lecturers who teach in clinical programs such as advanced midwifery, critical care, and so forth. And we constantly have this tug of war where we say that I want to be out there contributing to best practice, but I also need that intellectual pursuit. Clinical scholarship has provided us in the discipline with a niche area where we have guided advanced nurse practitioners entering into our programs who have a very similar tug-of-war experience to embark on their own scholarship journey. Today, people, the ICN says they want for nurses to be seen, and we clinical scholars ask, what about the cyclists? The ICN wants for nurses' voices to be heard, and clinical scholars ask again, and what about the voiceless? We clinical scholars say, let the activities of our clinical scholarship change the patterns of caring so that our population that is sightless and voiceless can feel our care. These are the journeys that you will hear today, attendees. Clinical scholars who have embraced intuition, theory, research, and its dissemination to provide care that is truly individualized and reflective. I thank you for your attention. Enough said and done. We now move on to our next speaker, who is Marcel Perumal. Ms. Perumal, would you like for me to share your slides, or are you happy to share them?
Thank you, Doc. I'll share them, and if I have any hiccups across the way, then I'll let you know.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and happy Nurses Day to all. I am Marcel, and this afternoon I am going to be presenting a short summary on clinical scholarship and patient-centered care from a critical care perspective. I would firstly like to thank Dr. Emamali as well as the UKZN Nursing Department for presenting us with this opportunity of sharing our research with all of you. It's indeed very exciting. So just a little introduction about myself. I am Marcel. I completed my undergrad at UKZN, and I have recently graduated actually on Monday with my master's in nursing. So in terms from a clinical perspective, I have worked in the ICU departments of Netcare Amshlanga as well as Albalito. Guys, I'm sorry about my dog barking on the background. He's just wishing everyone a happy Nurses Day today. Please would you give me a minute? I shall return back shortly.
Thank you, Marcel. And while Marcel is away, let me give you a little bit more about Ms. Marcel Perumal. Ms. Marcel has completed, as she said, a master's degree in nursing, and she has specialized in critical care and trauma nursing. As a young scholar, Marcel has aligned her focus to the WHO drive for patient-centered care. Working as an advanced nurse practitioner has made Marcel acutely aware of the healthcare that we presently face, in that it is accessible, but it is very often fragmented and of poor quality. This awareness has spearheaded her descriptive study on critical care nurses' perceptions of patient-centered care at a selected hospital in KwaZulu-Natal. Let us see if the dog has finished wishing us all happy Nurses Day.
Yes, yes, he has. Thank you, Doc. So getting back to my presentation, so I've worked in the ICU departments of Netcare Amshlanga as well as Albalito, and I've also been exposed to the emergency departments of those facilities. Completing the course, it has also awarded me an opportunity of working in the public sector of a level 1 ICU department, as well as being exposed to the transitioning of a hospital into a level 1 facility. So coming with that prior background knowledge, I have the perfect opportunity of contrasting and comparing those two facilities, public and private, and giving my input on that. So Before embarking on my study, there was a lot of things that I had noted, which had propelled me into wanting to research patient-centered care in the critical care area. And I'm just going to elaborate on these 3 points that I have on my screen now. So there was a complex critical care unit, and this is evident throughout the world. So the specialty of intensive care medicine was developed as a consequence to the poliomyelitis epidemic in the 1950s, where widespread mechanical ventilation was warranted for majority of the population. Since then, the technology available to support the critical care patients has become more sophisticated and complex, and the importance of the critical care unit in today's society is without question. The CCU is an environment that is intended for the care of seriously ill and unstable patients who generally remain within the hospital environment, whereas where they are from the critical care unit, they are usually transferred or downscaled to general wards. The complexity of the critical care unit is considered high because it is equipped with leading edge technology as well as computerized appliances. And where aggressive and invasive procedures are performed, the pace of these units are usually accelerated, and the stakes are usually between life and death is imminent. Therefore, the critical care unit is frequently stigmatized, and many misconceptions may arise with regard to the care and the attitudes of the healthcare team as a whole. In a similar manner, the critical care unit is also seen as an environment that is able to generate myths as well as contradictory feelings such as happiness, fear, anxiety, uncertainty, and so forth. The biggest challenge that the critical care faces is the lack of resources, which negatively affects the professional practice environment. South Africa has a unique disease burden compared to any other country, and this further complicates this professional practice environment. So just a little, some stats that I had acquired was that South Africa has a resource-limited public health system that caters for 84% of the total population. And of this 84%, South Africa only has a capacity to accommodate 43% in its critical care unit. In comparing it with a first world country, the United States has greater than 30 ICU beds per 100,000 of the population, whilst South Africa has a mere 8.9 ICU beds per 100,000 of the population. That is indeed a scary and worrying factor. In this, nurses are expected to perform their duties in grossly under-resourced environments, and catering for the needs of a diversely unique population makes providing patient-centered care very difficult to achieve. With regards to healthcare transformation, the 21st century has ushered in the dawning of a new era, the consumer-led climate. The 21st century healthcare consumer has drastically different needs as compared to their predecessors, and therefore we cannot do the things that were once done in the past. And the needs of the present day healthcare consumer is ever evolving and ever changing and continues to change in that. With the 21st century moving towards individualism and a consumer-led climate, patients who were once regarded as occupying very passive roles in their care have now taken active roles in their treatment, and they want to be a part of their treatment every step of the way. And therefore, we need to give them that. So we ask ourselves, what is the solution to these challenges that we face in healthcare? And through my research, I found that answer to be patient-centered care. So patient-centered care in a nutshell is basically improving patient care whilst simultaneously enhancing nurse experience. So the literature that I've researched highlights a twofold benefit of patient-centered care, and that is what actually caught my attention and drew me to the approach as a whole. Patient-centered care not only impacts the patient, but also the nurse. The patient advantages include a better understanding of the illness, as well as adherence to treatment plans, disease control, and an overall improvement in the quality and health of the patient. Patient-centered care does not only benefit patients, like I said in the beginning, but also the health professionals. There is strong evidence of a positive association between the adoption of a patient-centered approach as well as nurses' job satisfaction. The provision of patient-centered care was also linked to efficiency within organizations and a reduction in overall healthcare costs. Patient-centered care increases patient and healthcare professional satisfaction and enhances this vital relationship that nurses need to establish with their patients. Patient-centered care also significantly reduces the length of hospital stay for patients, and it is also associated with fewer unexpected in-hospital complications, and the big one, it leads to a reduction in mortality. Other advantages of patient-centered care include improved time allocation for care delivery, lower treatment costs, decreased hospitalization periods, as well as earlier discharges. All of these that I've mentioned have an impact on patient, health professional, and health organization. It was also found that job satisfaction and improved retention rates of staff were linked to patient-centered care. Patients often feel less vulnerable, and patient-centered care has the ability to decrease or alleviate vulnerability by allowing patients to become active role players in their own care and treatment. Patients are more empowered and engaged in their health care as a consequence of the nurses' compassionate attitudes and caring behaviors towards them. So what is patient-centered care? So the various terms or the concept of patient-centered care lends itself to various terms which are sometimes used interchangeably. These terms include personalized care, patient-centered care, as well as individualized care, amongst others. In healthcare, the concept of patient-centered care moves the focus of terminology from patients to persons, and this is the core crux of the approach itself, whereby we're not only looking at the person as an array of illnesses or the patient as an array of illnesses, but as a person who has their own needs, values, characteristics, morals, and so on. Recent literature defines patient-centered care as care that creates a partnership amongst healthcare professionals, patients, and patients' families to ensure that care delivered is attentive to the needs, values, and preferences of patients. This definition places the person at the center of care and not the illness, which was done in the past. It can be concluded that PCC or patient-centered care views persons as separate beings with different needs. Patient-centered care can also be viewed as altering or tailoring the nursing process to include all aspects of an individual's life. The concept encapsulates the family, occupation, interests, and even the personality characteristics of the recipient of care. So you may be asking yourself, what then is the connection between clinical scholarship and patient-centered care? So throughout my journey in my master's program, starting from when we began the coursework, I realized that clinical scholarship was going to be the vehicle that would drive patient-centered care in the critical area. I found that even though the term patient-centered care was frequently used in policies and procedures in the critical care unit, the care that I was witnessing was in fact not patient-centered. A classic example of this would be bath times, whereby patients were not given an opportunity to decide when they would like to go or when they would like to have bath times or hygiene rounds. And they were just given a bath at certain times so that nurses could continue with their routine. Another classic example would be visiting times. There was absolutely no leeway with regards to visiting times. And 5 minutes before the visiting times would be over, you would find the security coming into the clinical area to usher out the relatives from the critical care unit. I understood that because of these challenges, and as an advanced nurse practitioner, it was my responsibility to engage in clinical scholarship to make patient-centered care happen and to bring about a change in the patient-centered care that they thought they were practicing. As an advanced nurse practitioner, I was the link that took scholarship to practice, and thus that was how my study was conceptualized. So as Dr. Amamali had alluded to, I had conducted research. Sorry about that, I was having some technical difficulties. So I was conducting patient-centered care in a critical care unit at a tertiary hospital in KwaZulu-Natal. Can you see my screen, Doc?
Yes, we can, but you just need to get to your slide that you were talking to.
Okay.
And I'll tell you when you're there.
Sure. Okay, we've done this.
Yes. We've done this.
Okay, were we here? I think we were here.
Yes.
Okay, so I conducted research with regards to patient-centered care at a tertiary level in KwaZulu-Natal. So my aim was to determine critical care nurses' perceptions of patient-centered care at this hospital. My results showed that nurses showed an average support of patient-centered care through their activities, and I found this out by giving nurses questionnaires to complete. So basically, the results of average support for patient-centered care and an average rating of the care provided being patient-centered care is indicative that this patient-centered care is not fully translated into practice. And to end this, it would be that the commitment, it would be that the institution as well as the nurses had to form a commitment towards establishing a more patient-centered environment and approach to ensure that there is transformation with regards to nursing, and that this translates into nursing education, nursing practice, and even reaches management level. What is very important and I think central to clinical scholarship is this dissemination. We cannot conduct research or we cannot conduct studies and then harbor all of those findings to ourselves. We need to disseminate it, and that is exactly what I've done. So a report was compiled and was sent to the institution in which the research was conducted. A journal article is currently being written up by my facilitator and myself, as well as the clinical expertise. So the knowledge that I have gained through the study, I am now implementing in my area of clinical work. So how has my research impacted patient-centered care? In terms of nursing policy and management, so the results supported the management by determining how the practice environment is influencing the delivery of patient-centered care. Policies may also be developed to address this deficit between what is stated in the mission statement and what is actually happening on ground level. The study generated important information about the practice environment and nursing activities that can be enhanced to ensure patient safety and quality care outcomes, such as a change in birth times, as well as being flexible with regards to visitation times. So the impact of research on patient-centered care from a nursing practice perspective. So the results can be used to firstly create a more favorable environment for critical care nurses, which promotes efficiency in work and increases job satisfaction. And secondly, the results of the study may be used to improve patient-centered care by creating practice guidelines. The impact on nursing research. So my study may pave the way for future researchers to identify gaps in research concerning patient-centered care, especially in a resource-limited critical care setting or critical care units across South Africa. The study will add to foundation literature as it relates to perceptions of patient-centered care amongst critical care nurses and may increase critical care nurse understanding of patient-centered care. In terms of nursing education, the results of the study can support both undergraduate and postgraduate learning with regards to the importance of patient-centered care in generating quality patient care outcomes. As the study is exploring the nurse's perspective regarding patient-centered care, the results may identify deficits in the nursing curricula that can be strengthened in terms of patient-centered care activities. So we've come to the end of my presentation, and this is my last slide. So my take-home message on clinical scholarship. It is indeed an excellent way that brings scholarship into practice. It also allows advanced practitioner nurses to critically evaluate their environments and actively change it. This is crucial in a South African context whereby, like I said previously, there is a gross deficiency in resources. And being an advanced practitioner, we are able to identify problems because we work in the actual environments that the problems are taking place. It also allows advanced practitioners to collaborate with one another and to engage each other and help to bring about change. And finally, like I said, the importance of dissemination so that others who are in the similar context can understand or can benefit from our studies and our research. So once again, thank you all for listening to me. I hope that I have imparted some knowledge to you, and enjoy the rest of your Nurses Day, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much, Marcel, for that very insightful study. And I'm extremely excited about the dissemination that is already going on and the dissemination in terms of a manuscript that you are preparing. And we hope that once that manuscript is published, and we will all have access to the paper. So again, well done, young clinical scholar, and congrats on your recent graduation. I know that Prof. Brajcevic has put in a few questions she's opened up for questions. So Prof, are there any questions that attendees have put in that could be directed at Marcel before we move on?
No, there's no questions at the moment. I just sent a message saying that if people had questions, to please feel free to put them in the Q&A. But I'm not sure if maybe there is a question that people do have. If they wanted to just raise their hand, maybe we could see.
Sure, thank you. Marcel, I hope you have been reading the comments that are coming up. We have already sent your message internationally. There's some message from Saudi Arabia. So Indeed, you are a young clinical scholar, and we're very proud of you within the discipline of nursing. So if we have no questions, can we then move on to our next speaker for today? And our next speaker is Mrs. Gloria Musa. Mrs. Musa, would you prefer for me to share your slides, or are you happy to share it?
You may kindly share, please.
Thank you. Is that?
Just need to go one back.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So a little bit of an introduction for Mrs. Musa. Mrs. Gloria Musa is all the way from Nigeria. So big welcome to you. Sorry about all the technical hassles that you had to go through this morning. Ms. Musa has her master's in nursing acquired in the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and she is pursuing a PhD focusing on maternal and child health. She's also a lecturer in nursing at the Federal University of Lafia, Nigeria. Welcome, Mrs. Musa, and if I may hand over to you.
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh, even though it's good afternoon over there in South Africa, happy Nurses Day to all of us. I'm really privileged to be here. Thanks, Dr. Emamali, the host, and everyone there. Thank you for giving me the privilege to share the findings of my research and the implication for nursing clinical scholarship. So my topic this morning is family collaboration during pregnancy and its effect on clinical scholarship. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the outline for the presentation. Although we've already known what clinical scholarship is from the first presenter, and then what is family collaboration, we are going to see what it entails and what's the relevance of this in pregnancy, and then how can these findings be related with clinical scholarship, and then you find my conclusion and recommendation as we go on. Next slide. Okay, I think we've already had this. The clinical scholarship has to do with what evidence-based nursing, and it also goes a long way in improving practices that are based on meeting clients' needs efficiently, effectively, and making sure that what you're treating them satisfactorily, not just on trial and error, but this time around you're working based on scientific principles. You have facts that are backing your work. You don't just work because that's how it's been done, but you're working on what? You're guided by research, you have evidence, you are guided by what you do. You're not just working, but the aim is what? To ensure the best out of the patient. So what this entails is that research is not for only those in academics, but as they conduct the research, we also see that we have a responsibility to disseminate it. And also those in the clinical aspect, they also have a part to play in research and ensuring that what has been gained from the research is being put into practice. So we know definitely that those involve scientific principles, the use of current research, and then you have guidelines are also being developed, and mostly these guidelines are also coming as a result of research, and this overall leads to quality improvement, both for in care and also in practice. Next slide. Okay, so my research was basically on developing an educational pamphlet to enhance family collaboration during pregnancy. As we can see there, the picture says it all. The collaboration is needed from every member of the family to support this pregnant woman that is among them, with the overall aim of what? Ensuring that the care is being coordinated. So it implies that the family work together as a team to provide the support, the care that is needed during pregnancy. Next slide, please. Okay, so from the findings of this study, we could see that when there is a family collaboration during pregnancy, it ensures that there's a working together to provide care and assistance to the pregnant woman. And this also facilitates antenatal care. These themes are actually what findings from the participants of the study. The participants of the study included newly delivered mothers, those who had undergone pregnancy successfully delivered, were involved in an interview using a semi-structured guide, and then their family members also were given a structured questionnaire to answer. So they also were able to see that once there is collaboration, it allows the woman to also have access to antenatal care. It provides protection from harm for the woman, and it also provides companionship for her, that togetherness. In fact, one of the participants of the study rightly mentioned, let me just quote her. She said that for her, during the pregnancy, when she was asked the question about the support, and then the theme was being there for me, she said for her husband didn't go to work early when she was pregnant. He was around with her. He gave her, in fact, even when he goes to work, he comes back to check on her. Let me cut her. She said, when my leg hurts, he massages it for me. What really makes me happy are the household chores that he does. At the later stage of the pregnancy, he brought 2 ladies to assist me with the house chores, and he inspects me. These are themes that were coming in, and these were expressions that the women were giving as a result of collaboration. And you were able to get nutritional support. You were able to get on support, also spiritual support through prayers. Some of them mentioned how they had their relatives pray for them at all times for safe delivery, and they said that really made them happy. Another aspect we saw was contributing financially, where some of the participants mentioned, one of the participants mentioned how her husband doesn't have money, and when there is an emergency, the family members were always there to provide for her. They'll send her money. All these are parts of the collaboration we are talking about. And whenever there were rules that were set, those were beneficial rules. So these are coming from the side of the participants. I happened to be in the clinical practice, in the clinical area when I conducted this research. So for me, it was like, I was really happy and excited. It was something I wanted, even though I was not posted to the maternity at that point, but it was something I had passion for. Next slide, please. Okay, so what happened at the end of the study, at the end of the research, this educational pamphlet was developed. And then when it was developed, I had the opportunity to also meet some of the participants and show them, before making the final corrections, that this is what has been developed. Some of them were surprised. They say, wow, they thought this was just type of a research that I'll meet them in the clinical area, collect their data, and I'll never get back to them. So they were really, excited. So it means most of the time as academics, when research is being conducted, we also have a responsibility. Those participants are also eager to hear the output of that and how it can influence practice. That's where the clinical scholarship comes about. How do we disseminate it? Do we collect data from patients and then we get our degrees, we get our certificates, we then get back to them. So when this educational pamphlet was developed, I took it to the same setting where I conducted the study. It was a tertiary hospital in the northeastern part of Nigeria. So I took it to them at their antenatal clinic to give them as an educational tool for them to use. And also part of the findings of this research paper has been published, and a second one will also be published from it. So this also has to do with what? Dissemination. As it's been disseminated, now the paper is not, the result is not only restricted, it has gone international. People in Australia have opened it, they are congratulating, oh, we've seen the publication, So that also gives room for further research, not only within the context of where this study has taken place. This also what adds to clinical scholarship, because they've seen that, okay, this is what happens. In practice, there's a gap. And this gap is that some family members during the study were found to be unaware. It's like they don't even know what responsibility do I own a pregnant woman as a family member. Some feel they are male, so what do I do with this pregnant family member? But when the findings came out, the results were ready, they were so, wow, so this is what I have to do. They were excited about it, knowing what to do will also enable them to do it. And now that it has gone further, it also it gives an avenue for further research. Maybe someone will say, okay, this is a qualitative study. Let me carry it out on a larger number, or let me carry it out in this way in my own country, in my own setting, and see, this has also gotten to a wider audience. And this tool now is an educational material. Both the midwife can use it, and to an extent, this will also provide room for interdisciplinary collaboration, because over there, when you go for the antenatal, the maternity, you find what? The doctors are there, the midwives are there, the nurses are there. In fact, at times you have to bring the social welfare, at times you have to make phone calls to invite the family member. And then, when you have something guiding you in a very polite way and friendly way, the pictures were drawn for the pamphlet, and it was made available to them. So you see, this way, I've gone back to the setting. So it's in the context of where it was taken, the result has been disseminated to them. It has been documented. Somebody else tomorrow can come up without meeting me. He'll see this is what has been done. And, I want to build further on it. That's how to improve on clinical scholarship. There's that problem we have in nursing of the theory practice gap. We know it in theory, but, when it comes to practice, we know it, the literatures are there, but there's that theory practice gap. But when you take people, you're collaborating in the academia and the clinical area, all those are parts of clinical scholarship. And the overall impact is what we're talking about: improvement of services, evidence-based practice, research-based practice. So this is what this study is all about. I've said it that the dissemination process, the family members, some were contacted, some of the pregnant women, the women that participated were contacted. Some were even sent, those that could not meet physically. One got an email. All those things are ways of making your findings accessible, and then how it can be used. So as I've also said, this publication has made it go out to a larger audience who will now be able to key into that. And I myself, as you study, you also see that, okay, you can do better, and then you want to go further into that area. So those findings, has a way of linking the academics and the application of the clinical scholarship, just like a synergy that is going on. Next slide, please. So overall, from the findings of this study on the family collaboration, you realize that it's not only now for midwives. Even though my master's was in midwifery, I was doing the admission in midwifery, I did it, but now you now see that for this implementation is not only the midwives. So when you're talking about clinical scholarship, as it regards to midwifery, as it regards to any other aspect, it's not a one person thing. It's not just, okay, I'm the advanced nurse practitioner. All of us will have to come together. We have to work together in ensuring that what we've learned in the academia, we bring it into practice. We also need to inculcate that into our students. That's one way to bridge that gap as well. So the future of nursing, as our team says, our nurses are our futures. So everybody that we see here in nursing today, a time is coming that the younger generation are coming. So unless this practice of clinical scholarship is set and we key into it, we might end up having a gap, having a link between the academia and clinical practice. And the only way you can bridge that gap, that link, is what? Through research. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that the future of nursing will indeed be greater if there continue to exist a synergy between academic findings and how it informs clinical practice and advancement of clinical scholarship. So we all need to collaborate to make this happen. So I'm glad, to present these findings to you and also make known what I've done in my own research and seeing how it can be linked to clinical scholarship. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah, here are my references. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm having problem with internet. There's a last reference on the paper we did with my supervisor in 2022, myself, Professor Briswick, Ms. Zanel Zondi. So I had put it in the edited PowerPoint I did, but I couldn't access the link via my computer. So, and I sent the corrected one led to Dr. Wahida, but she has it, the corrected one. So I'm sure if anyone wants it, he's going to have it with that uploaded reference, and you can also be able to access it. That was what was developed from the findings of this study that I had conducted during my master's. Next slide. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Musa. And as Mrs. Musa said towards the end of her presentation, her master's study was supervised by Dr. or Prof. Brajcevic and Mrs. Zanele Zondi. And Mrs. Musa has already embarked on her PhD, as I had mentioned at the beginning of her presentation. Can I open it up to any questions? You can just go ahead because I'm unable to actually see your hand. I see there is one attendee.
There's one hand that's up.
Yes.
It's Busi. Professor Bengu, would you like to go ahead? Hi, Busi.
Hi, Prof. Bengu. Okay, I think Prof is in transit at the moment, so maybe the reception won't be so clear because she did tell me that she is. Let me just enable her to speak and maybe that will help.
Hello. Hello.
Yes. Yes, Prof, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I was mute and I couldn't find where I could unmute myself. Apologies. Firstly, congratulations to all of you for your presentations or for this event actually, and your effort to actually make sort of a niche area, which is a clinical scholarship. Apologies, I'll ignore this call. And congratulations to the young scientists. The one thing that I thought I would say is it would be so nice to see this collaboration reflected in both of you, both practice and academics presenting together. And practice clinical people telling us how they have benefited. Okay, I understand they were participants, but sometime it would be nice to hear both of you just to demonstrate your being collaborated. But it's so nice to think about collaboration, and I hope it will really become or will become a real collaboration, seeing the two of you practice and clinical, showing and talking together. Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you on that. The second thing that I thought I would talk about is the issue of family-centered and person-centered. It's a question, and it's just an innocent question. How do you relate the two? Are they the same? Are they different? Family-centered and person-centered or patient-centered care. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Bengu. Panelists, is there anybody who would like to respond to Prof. Bengu?
So thank you for the question, Prof. So during my literature research, I found that the two are very interlinked and that they are very similar when they are being defined as well as when they are being put into practice. So with regards, I can speak from a perspective of patient-centered care. There isn't a definite definition or defined definition that has been accepted globally on patient-centered care. And because of that, that creates a lot of ambiguity within patient-centered care. And I think that is one of the stumbling blocks towards adopting a patient-centered care approach. But from what I can gather, the two concepts are very similar and they may be even interlinked. That could be another research perspective for us to differentiate or clearly define the thin lines that separate patient-centered care and family-centered care. Because within patient-centered care, we also encourage family participation. And then family-centered care will also encourage family participation as well. So I think like I said, the biggest stumbling block will be the ambiguity between the definitions of those two very distinct but interrelated concepts. I hope that answers your question. If not, I will personally conduct more literature research and get back to you on that one. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for your answer, Ms.
Thank you.
Peruma.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that calls for some concept clarification, maybe,
you,
which
Prof.
could be one of
Bengu.
the topics for the
Yes.
next one. Yes.
Yes, thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
And yeah, in fact, that is, as Marcel alluded to, a very fine lines between the two concepts of probably autonomy, self-autonomy versus autonomy of the family, and all those kinds of intricate terms that one would have to clarify when looking at both the concepts. Are there
Thank
any
you.
questions?
Can I add something, Wahida?
Sure, Prof. Rasovic.
So thank you very much. And I would completely agree with Marcel and with what Prof. Bengu has been saying, that concept clarification is really important, because I would also just add in that there is family-focused care and family nursing, which is also sitting there in between patient-centered and family-centered care. One of the, I think the main differences is also has to do with in family-focused care, it's about seeing the patient as a unit. They're within the family unit. So just to throw that in there as well. But I do agree, it would be a really interesting webinar to have to discuss the differences between all that terminology. Thank you.
Thank you. If we have no more questions, maybe we can go to our next item on the program, which is, for me, very entertaining one. It is really an interview. And before I go on, I see Prof. Bengu has her hand. Maybe it is the...
Sorry,
It's a legacy hand.
It's a
Legacy
legacy. It's a
hand.
legacy hand. I'm sorry. I was actually trying to say thank you, guys. I now have to leave. I have to drive to Kloof now.
Thank you. We
So
are
it's
honored
quite far
that
from
you-
where I am. Thank
We are
you.
honored that you attended, Prof.
I'm also proud of you. Thank you.
So I don't know whether our next presenter, who is the interviewer of the day, Janet, are you on board?
No, I can't see Janet. I think you just need to go ahead, Wahida.
Wahida said Janet is load shedding.
Yeah, she had load shedding, but yeah, she was supposed to have logged on, but that's fine. That's fine. So our next item, as I said, is an interview that we are having with one of our young clinical scholars who is actually from Seychelles. The interview was supposed to have been conducted by Ms. Ngiba, but because she is not here, I will, of course, interview Mr. Almez. But before I do so, I would like to just say a little about Ms. Ngiba, because she is really also one of our very promising young clinical scholars. So if I may just speak a little about her. Ms. Janet Ngiba is an advanced nurse practitioner, and she works at Greytown District Hospital. She also completed her master's degree in nursing. She was supervised by Prof. Brajcevic, and her specialty is again critical care and trauma. Janet is making rapid inroads into clinical scholarship. She is a receiver of the International Family Nursing Association Scholarship. And she will be attending the Congress of the Family Nursing Association conference to present her research this year in 2023. She is also a member of the International Family Nursing African chapter, which is a chapter focusing on family nursing in the African continent. Currently, Janet is involved in a quality improvement project conducted by the University of Michigan, USA, working under the supervision of Prof. Brajcevic. And it is sad that she could not be here today. She has been supporting.
Sorry, Wahida. Sorry, I see Janet is there. I'm going to
Oh,
ask
she is.
Mbuso to bring her
Okay.
through. Yeah, but you can
Thank you
carry
for
on.
that. Yeah, thank you for that, Prof. And so she's really somebody that we are putting all our stakes on as a future clinical scholar, as a future anchor in evidence-based practice and clinical scholarship at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. The person that is being interviewed is Mr. Jean-Paul Almez. I want to welcome you, Jean-Paul, and say thank you and apologies for all the problems we had with connectivity, but I know how tenacious you are, so thank you for putting up with all of that. Jean-Paul works in the accident and emergency unit at Seychelles Hospital and is very involved in driving research in Seychelles, both in the critical care and emergency care areas. Particularly, he's interested in promoting a culture of scholarship in clinical practice and disseminating new practices among the staff working there. Very collaborative in that he works closely with the multidisciplinary team in the emergency care area. For his honors degree, he looked at evidence-based practice utilization in the clinical areas and was supervised by Dr. Imamali. And for his master's, he conducted one of the very few studies on clinical scholarship Again, supervised by myself and co-supervised by Prof. Brajcevic. Welcome, Jean-Paul and Janet. I hope I was able to capture your credentials adequately.
Thank you, Doc. I hope so too, having a bit of a network issue, but load shedding is over on my side, finally. Thank God.
Thank God. And do you want to then put on your videos?
All right. I've put on my video. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can.
Jean-Paul?
Yes, hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
All right. Should we go on, Doc?
Prof, can we see Jean-Paul? On my side, I can't.
No, I can't see. It doesn't have his video on.
Okay,
There we go. Hi, JP. Nice to see
Hi, how are you?
you.
good to see you. Okay, Jen.
All right. An official good afternoon, Dr. Emily and the rest of the attendees. And my name is Miss Ntombifuthi Janet Ngiba. And as a young scholar, I am quite enthusiastic about clinical scholarship as I have started my journey in research under the supervision of Prof. Brajcevic. And I believe that indeed clinical scholarship is a cornerstone to nursing as a profession and as a discipline. So today it gives me great pleasure to interview a colleague who has actually conducted a study in clinical scholarship. So a very good afternoon and welcome, Mr. Almis. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Happy.
All right.
Should I start?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yeah, we can start. But before we go on to what truly seems like an amazing study, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and your experience as a scholar?
All right. Once again, thank you for the invitation. It was a great pleasure to be there with you, here with you on the Zoom. Waida made a good introduction for me. Anyway, yes, I'm Jean-Paul. I'm a nurse by profession. At present, I'm working as a clinical nurse specialist in the accident of emergency in Seychelles Hospital. And under my belt, I hold the following degree, like Miss Waida, Dr. Waida has said, a master's in nursing research, honors in nursing education, and a BNAP in critical care. All my degree, I done it in UKZN. The research I look at was promoting clinical scholarship in clinical arena. To be honest, the milestone was not easy one to accomplish. Okay, it required lots of dedication along with hard work, which was I committed to. You have to be inquisitive and thirsty for knowledge. Okay, and whenever one's gain that knowledge, you should not stop there. You must be able to challenge that knowledge, not to accept everything as it is or without questioning. Life as a scholar, I may say, is very promising because it pushes you and encouraging you to enhance your knowledge and practice based on evidence. This is the experience of a scholar, and this is why we are having good practice nowadays.
That's a very interesting experience, JP. Now for the study, we would just like you to share what the study was about and perhaps the most important findings.
Yes, the study aims us to explore and describe clinical scholarship in order to develop recommendations to promote clinical scholarship in the clinical arena. I conducted the research at a tertiary institution and targeted the nursing student in clinical specialists who were pursuing a bachelor degree in nursing advanced practice or a master's degree in clinical specialty. The study also looked at the lecturers teaching in the clinical specialties at the university. Okay, and one of the findings, the main barriers were the lack of support and funding to support clinical scholarship. Also, the clinical staff felt that they did not have the skill to write articles and they require mentoring in publishing. Others spoke of mentoring in actually conducting research. What is really worth mentioning is that the clinical nurse did not know about disseminating their results from studies. And this is a key in scholarship that we need to report and inform practice about our studies. This is the way to improve practice. Because also in my interview, when I, just to elaborate, because some of them just do the study and they do nothing about it. That this is just there in the library and this is it. I've done my degree and complete. That's why sometimes it's the practice, not inform theory. It's just there. You end it there.
So dissemination is the key.
Yes, it's a big problem. Yes.
Okay. So what would be your advice or suggestions to our audience that emanated from the study?
My advice to the clinical nurse or the one now, I mean, the scholar that plan to do the research, just want to say the sky is the limit. Nothing comes easy, okay? If we want to make a change to clinical practice, we have to change. Also, I want to share experience that I had while conducting the research. The thing is, when you ask the participant to, answer your question, be it questionnaire or interview, some of them are reluctant to participate. Reason because they say they don't know what to say, they haven't been there before, all sort of excuses. But if they don't participate once again, it will go nowhere. We will stuck where we are. And this kind of attitude slows down scholarship and it can delay development and may not bring new changes if we want to improve or clear any doubts. Okay, and I would like to thank all participants participated in my study, and without them, the study would have not been accomplished. Okay, and clinical scholarship, just to add, it's a very interesting journey. When I started, it was very limited articles, and I struggled a lot. And like Miss Dr. Waida and Prof. Petra said, they were my supervisor and co-supervisor, which I'm very pleased today for who I am. It was really hard, especially Prof. Petra pushes me a lot, and I cry a lot. Even Dr. Waida, I did cry, but I'm happy today to be who I am. It's because of them. So challenging science is an art. By challenging science, only then we can understand what are we doing and how we can get things done better if there's so a need to do. By understanding, only then we can explain and get things done. Last but not least, as long as we have evidence, then we may say we have the right tools to work with and defend the nursing profession. This cannot be achieved without research and enthusiastic, inquisitive, and thirsty scholar for knowledge. Not to forget, the more you share your knowledge, the more you will gain it back because other people will challenge you. And that's what I went through while I was doing my study. You know how it goes. You always have to come and you send your thesis to, or your chapter for correction. And you can send like 15 pages, come back to you, only 5 has been accepted, and that's make you feel like crying. So
Yes.
you don't have to give up on it. So it makes you go and read more and to get more information. That's me push you further to enhance your knowledge. Be a mastermind of your work.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. With a lot of crying and a lot of sending pages, and then they come back with the red ink and so many comments, and then you have to go back, dig more, research more. But it is truly an inspiration what you have just said, and your challenges that you went through to accomplish complete your study. It is truly an inspiration, and indeed the sky is the limit. Thank you so much, JP.
Thank you.
Over to you, Dr. Imemeli.
Thank you, both of you. I see you busy lambasting us about the color of ink. Next time, Prof, I think you should use blue ink because my pages were also quite full of red ink when I received them from you. But yes, that is what clinical scholarship is. It is about questioning and inquiring and changing practice. And today we are proud that we are making these baby steps. And one of the reasons we are doing so is because of our guru in clinical scholarship. May I hand over Prof. Brajcevic to you, and she is closing up, I think, with mapping the future of clinical scholarship. Also, her huge resume, I will leave her to be the one to explain it to you. Over to you, Prof. Brajcevic.
Thank you so much, Wahida, and thank you very much to the presenters that have been before. I'm going to have to change to some different color-friendly ink. It seems I must move from my red ink, but it's true. It is a very challenging thing to conduct research, but I'm sure you can all agree that it's amazing to see what all these scholars have achieved and how it's furthered their careers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mapping the future of clinical scholarship. And I think that my job has been made a lot easier because the speakers before me have actually mentioned quite a lot of these things. And so it'll serve as a kind of a wrap-up. So just the first thing, and very briefly, why nurses should do research. This is one of my favorite slides. I always love showing it because I think it really does encapsulate the multiple roles that nurses play. And I think it doesn't matter where you are as a nurse, you do end up doing 101 different things every day. So we know that nursing is a holistic, compassionate approach to care. It allows us to have this little window into people's lives. And that can be extremely valuable for us in that we then connect very authentically with them. And as a nurse, one of the things that I always appreciate the most is that we get to connect and communicate, interact with people, usually when they're in their most vulnerable. They're in a very difficult state, and we are able to assist and hopefully make things a bit better. And we're on the front lines to sort of help to meet their daily needs. Previously, doctors really dominated, the healthcare research scene. There was lots of research around new treatments, how to stop the spread of disease, etc. But we know that nurses are really at the forefront of delivering care to these people. And we know that nurses play a key role in identifying and improving the quality of healthcare that we give to our patients. And we know that we really need these nursing models of care. If we want to improve healthcare for everyone, we need to make sure that the nurse's contribution is in there. So it's also important to think about the fact that research helps to build networking skills. It helps to build relationships with peers. So there might be the doctors you're working with, the physios, the OTs, the patients and their families. It also increases confidence. I'm sure you saw today how confident our speakers were. And I think if I had asked any of them a number of years ago to speak, they probably might have had a heart attack and died. But look at them today. They're extremely confident and able to express their research. It also creates shared language within a team so that you're able to communicate well with each other. And I believe promotes job satisfaction. And I think from some of the speakers here today, we have seen that as well. So despite the fact that nurses' contribution is extremely important and central to universal health coverage, unfortunately, the value of nurses and nursing is often very poorly understood and also undervalued, unfortunately. And so we really need to ensure that we do go about making visible the work that nurses do. And one of the ways that we can really do this is by making sure that we conduct research on the work of nursing and making this work visible for people to read and to then acknowledge and know about the difference that nursing is in fact making on the healthcare landscape. Barbara Stillwell from the Nursing Now campaign from a few years ago had this to say, where she said nurses operate under the radar. And unfortunately, that's often the case, that nurses are sort of invisible workers there. We need to make sure that they are very visible and that their contribution is very visible to all members of the healthcare team. So there are challenges in building capacity for nursing research, for evidence-based practice, for promoting clinical scholarship. And we've heard about some of them from JP and from Jen. But it's just to say that, you know, these are not our problems in South Africa, in the Seychelles. These are problems that also people have all across the world. And this is just some work with nurses in the UK. And they were also talking about the fact that there are numerous barriers to research activities. And it has to do with very similar things, regardless of where you are in the world. It's about, you know, the lack of funding for nursing research, about perhaps your leaders in your workplace not valuing or not seeing the value of really supporting nursing research. Perhaps it's also the fact that wherever you are working, there isn't anybody who can really help you in terms of guiding you and mentoring you in your research practice. And often it's also the fact that your organization really does not value research. And so if you're going to be spending a lot more time and effort in doing research for no reward, it's very difficult to motivate people to do it. JP, as he mentioned in his study, did find a lot of barriers, and a lot of it was the same around funding, mentorship, recognition. But there are also enablers mentioned that if we do have reward mechanisms in place, perhaps some protected time, ensuring that we have some role models and some mentoring. It can serve to encourage nurses to want to continue and do some research. And I think one of the important things is that we have to really make nurses aware why it's relevant, why it's important to do it. So I think that we have to really be sure to make research visible. And I think that's one of the things that we really are doing today. And thank you very much to Wahida for such a webinar. And by making research visible, I mean that we need to sort of really show its practical application, show how this research is actually going to make a change or make a difference at the bedside, in the clinical areas. I often say to my students, you know, you don't do research just so that you can have your thesis in this book that you put on your coffee table, so that whoever comes to visit you at home, you say to them, would you perhaps like to see my research? And then they think you're very clever and very important. Your research really needs to go back to the place where it can then make a difference, as JP was talking about, you know, disseminating. So here are just some examples of how we can ensure that we can make our research visible by perhaps making a protocol, like Gloria did. She made a pamphlet that can then be handed out to pregnant women and their family members. And sometimes it's also about making a model that really serves to explain about a particular situation. For example, how to look after families in the intensive care unit. Nurses really have a rich tradition of being called the hackers of the hospital. And what they mean is that nurses can always make a plan. We can always find ways to solve a problem and to get something done. And I think we often underestimate how important that is. I think, however, during COVID, the world really got to see how useful it can be to have healthcare members who are able to do that. And during COVID, there were many times where examples were made of nurses who were customizing medical equipment to then be able to use it in new ways. So this was one of my favorite, and I always like to show it. And these were nurses in Brazil who came up with the hand of God. And this was their idea of how they were able to provide comfort to their COVID-19 patients who were intubated and were not allowed to have any family members or loved ones nearby. And they were very worried that these patients were feeling isolated and alone. And so they made this hand just to make it feel like at least somebody was there for them. There were numerous examples of how nurses were coming up with all sorts of innovative strategies during the pandemic, and also nurses in Africa. This is a colleague of mine, Emmanuel from Ghana, and he found innovative ways of being able to make electrodes when you don't have them anymore. If you have an opportunity, I would just say, you know, have a look at this book. This has been written by South African nurses that's really talking about the nurses' accounts during COVID. And it really serves to highlight the important role that nurses played. So I think it's also really important to be a clinical scholarship role model and mentor. And I always like to talk about nurse champions, and I think nurse champions are vital, and they really play an important role in bridging the gap between research and practice. And these are excellent practitioners who themselves are very passionate about improving the quality of care. They champion projects enthusiastically, encourage others, serve to really motivate people to continue further. And these can be people, whether they're in education, leadership, policy development, they can be in many different situations. And I'm sure today you would agree with me that through our presentations, we have definitely been introduced to a number of nurse champions, and we would just encourage them on their path. This is just an example from some nurses in Tanzania who decided that there was a problem with emergency care in the more rural areas, because when patients got to them, they were extremely compromised, and they wanted to do something to help their fellow nurse colleagues in the more rural areas. So they developed an emergency short course that has been running for over 10 years now. That's been accredited by the country's Ministry of Health and Higher Education. And so it just serves to show just what a group of nurses could manage to do and what a change that they have made. I would just say that, remember that being a role model is about trying to remove obstacles to the people that we mentee. It doesn't mean we always manage, but we do try. But I think it's also really important as a role model to be able to show the failures, so to be real to those that you are mentoring. Otherwise, people think that maybe you've had this really easy road, and that when you then get a rejection, there's something wrong with you. So I quite like this. This is a colleague that suggested that it's a professor, and he said he was going to put up all his rejections on his door. So every time someone rejected any of his research ideas, rejected any of his articles, rejected any of his grant applications, anything, he put it up on his door so that when people came to visit him, they could see all of his rejections, and they didn't think that being rejected was something strange. And then, hopefully it helped to make his mentees feel that rejection is just one of the things that happen as a researcher, possibly along the lines of JP talking about his crying. It's true, it's hard. And so I think by showing people these rejections, you are making people realize that it's hard for everybody. There's nothing wrong with you if you are facing some rejections. It's quite normal. You just need to be tenacious and keep going. I think for our nurses who are trying to establish themselves as clinical scholars, it's very important to try and provide some support if possible. So whether it's through mentorship initiatives, whatever, it really is useful. We've found in acute care that providing mentorship and finding support in that way has really served to allow nurses in a number of countries to really get going with their own clinical scholarship. It's also important to try and make sure that you're working together and not in isolation. So here is just an example of one of the professional societies. And I would definitely encourage everybody on the webinar that if you're wanting to work towards developing your clinical scholarship, look for the professional society that is most relevant to you. That might be a critical care society, it might be a midwifery organization, whatever it is, and get involved there, because that's where you'll often find sort of like-minded people, where you will find your mentors to support you. And work together. It's not about nurses just working with nurses. It's about finding support from all sorts of places. And this is just an example of how a lot of emergency nurses have worked together with nurses and other healthcare professionals from many different countries, doing many different things in terms of research in order to support and further develop each other. There is a project that I have been lucky enough to have led, which is developing research innovation and research leadership in South Africa. And I just wanted to acknowledge my co-PIs here. But I wanted to just show you sort of in the path of being a clinical scholar, a researcher, there are certain sort of things that we have found to be very useful and enabling. Again, it's been around mentorship. You know, if you want to become a clinical scholar, you really do need to find people who can help you along the path. Otherwise, you make it very long and difficult for yourself. And I think definitely in nursing, there are plenty of mentors around in all the countries. We also had a flexible training program because we know that when it comes to scholarship, when it comes to research, to translation of evidence, there's a number of skills that you really just have to be taught. We also found it's really important to think about your personal development, because otherwise you end up developing people and then they become overwhelmed, stressed, fatigued, and then they leave. And we don't want that. We want people to be holistic and well-rounded. So it's not just about putting all your effort into developing your research. It's also about making sure that you look at your own personal development. Social accountability is important. It's not about just sitting there and thinking up research topics. It's about really going into the communities, whether it be your midwifery community, your acute care, your community health, and seeing what the problems are, and then being able to do sort of socially relevant research, something that's going to have an impact in practice. And then developing communities of practice is really about building people around you that are then researching and working in your similar area. That's the way that we are able to make impact. I am almost finished, Wahida. There's also a need to demystify research, I believe. Usually this is what I have when I start talking to about research, especially with nurses who are working at the bedside. And I've termed it research phobia, because they get very scared and don't necessarily want to talk about it. But I would say that there are ways to address this, and it really is just about starting simple and having some nice small study that's really targeted, making sure that you have a good team that you're working with, and a mentor of mine always said to me, it's very, very important that when you make a team, he believes, they should be people you enjoy working with, so that you have fun while you're doing this work as well. Then you need to look at what's relevant, and then make sure that you put in some timelines so that you keep to them. Otherwise, this idea that you have maybe is going to be 5 or 10 years in the making. So if I just look at the way forward, in terms of what we've been saying today, I just wanted to mention the Academy of Nursing of South Africa. I am, again, honored to be the current president of the society. And just to say that this society is about recognizing, utilizing, and promoting excellence in nursing and midwifery in South Africa. And it really is working to do that in order to ensure or promote optimal care for our, population of South Africa. And through the society, we really want to showcase the contribution that nurses are making through the generation, synthesis, translation, etc., of knowledge in all the specialist areas of nursing. So these are just the objectives of the Academy of Nursing of South Africa. And I don't expect you to read them all, but it really just is around promoting scholarship and scholarly activities is one of our big objectives, as well as creating platforms that allow for the dissemination and collaboration of clinical scholarship. We've heard from our excellent speakers earlier around what scholarship is and how it is central to this advancement of knowledge and contribution to nursing. I think that's why we also talk about the art and science of nursing. And, you know, that scholarship is not just for academics, people sitting in universities or sitting in research setting. It's vitally important that the clinical nurses, the nurses working in the clinical areas, are involved in research, and that we have to make sure that we are training people to be able to carry out this when they are clinical nurses at the bedside. We know that there are weaknesses in our current setting, that we have under-resourced training institutions, and our nursing culture perhaps has not really been what it should be in order to develop scholarship, but we would like to think that things are changing, and we would like to encourage this. And just to say, to thank Prof. Gisela van Rensburg for her slides. So I'm encouraging us to really think about how and what we are doing in terms of changing the nursing culture so that we are becoming clinical scholars, and for nurses to be recognized as these frontline healthcare providers who are making an impact in healthcare. This is also something for us just to have in the back of our minds to think about. In other parts of the world, specifically in America, they have a Doctorate of Nursing Practice program where they are developing clinical scholars. In Africa, we are really looking at developing research scholars with a PhD program. We don't have a Doctorate of Nursing Practice, and it's perhaps one of the things for you to take home is for you to just think about whether you think a Doctor of Nursing Practice is something that we should be looking at for Africa. And if you are interested, I would advise you, go on Google and have a read about it and see what you think. So in closing, if Wahida doesn't mind, I would perhaps ask that you learn from a frog. So these foam nest frogs, they build a nest, if you look where my arrow is, and the tadpoles need to drop down into water to survive and grow to then become a frog. So you need to really think about, I think, how you are setting yourself up in order to be this clinical scholar. So have you perhaps set yourself up to fail? Are you like this frog, doomed because you built your nest above this puddle that was once there, but it was actually a very temporary puddle on a very busy road. So you can imagine what's going to happen to those little tadpoles when they drop down. Or are you setting yourself up for success? You built your nest over a large body of water, and so there's no worries for those tadpoles. We know that the road to clinical scholarship is difficult and will be blocked probably many times by many obstacles. And I also guard against you having this sort of iceberg illusion that when you look at other people, it looks like they're all very successful and very easy, it seemed to come to them very easily. But remember what's below the surface. And this is just for you to think about. If you think you are too small to make a difference, then you haven't spent a night with a mosquito. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wahida. Over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Brajcevic, for sharing your expertise with us on this webinar, and also for always sharing your expertise with us at the ground level. Yes, clinical scholarship, I agree, and you would have seen from all the other presenters, it is something that requires hard work. It also requires resistance and resilience. But at the end of the day, these are no new characteristics to nurses, and therefore we should be committed to it in order for us to be the drivers of healthcare. I just want to see if there are any questions or any comments that you would like to see, or if there's anybody that you would like on the panel to address. And if not, I want to be in keeping with the time, which is 13:54 at the moment. Panelists, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience before we call this webinar a day and then go off to enjoy the rest of Nurses Day?
Wahida, could we ask them maybe each to give us maybe just one take-home kind of message on perhaps how to motivate other nurses?
Yes, that would be a start. Are there any takers? I see some of our panelists have left because of the load shedding, but those who are here, are there any pearls that you want to share with our attendees?
Dr.
Yes, go ahead,
Imamali
Janet.
and Prof, yes, it's Jen. I think one thing I would share that Prof. Brajcevic shared with me, and it took me into participating in an international study, is networking is key when it comes to clinical scholarship. So networking and with people who are already there, and with people who are making big moves as well, and you starting small is actually key to developing your skills and developing your research as well.
Thank you, Janet. I see there are no other takers.
Why don't we just ask them? Gloria, I see Gloria's unmuted.
Okay, I'll also like to share by saying that we just have to start. You just remove that fear. Once there's nothing that comes easy. You just start from somewhere. Like Prof have rightly said, like doctors even over here, you see they have fellowship, they have scholarship programs. It encourages them to go into practice. There's a reward for that. You get your promotion, you get your title. So I think for nurses, the fear is there that, okay, who will support me if I start? The nurses, they are too busy with the clinical work. There's no time for research. But I'm sure if we put away that fear and we are able to start, once you start, you realize that you'll be moving. So just keep the fear and start, and you'll see yourself making progress. Thank you.
Jean-Paul?
Yes, like Prof said, it's true. If you get the right person to teach you and help you around and help you to identify your potential, then it will be a starting point, and we should keep on pushing to achieve our goal. And failures only exist when you are failed to try, not try to fail.
Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Yeah. Thank you.
Marcel?
I think all the others have summed it up so beautifully, but I think just keeping in mind the big picture, because whilst you're conducting research, things can become very distracting. You can lose hope at the red ink when you see the red ink. For me personally, the red ink is my trauma that I'm still struggling to get over. But I think keeping in mind the big picture of, yes, you're going to accomplish something and working towards it. So yeah, that would be my take home. And thank you again for this platform, Doc.
Thank you, Marcel. Attendees, we thank you for your presence today. Anything can be arranged, but it can only go successfully if you have people attending, and therefore we say thank you for that. My take-home message is that you've heard a lot about clinical scholarship and individuals' personal experiences about clinical scholarship. My clinical scholarship or journey to clinical scholarship started because not for personal gratification, but for the effect or the ripple effect that it would have for the population that I cared for and that I care for. And anybody working with me or being with me would know that that is my ultimate vision, to promote the care of the people, to promote the care of the population that I serve. And in this quest and journey in clinical scholarship, it is very important that we always keep in mind that it is not a selfish journey, but rather it's a very unselfish journey, because service to humanity is all about changing clinical practice. We hope that you have enjoyed the session as much as we have enjoyed putting it together for you. What came out of this webinar is that we nurses are not only amazing during pandemics, but rather we are amazing in how we are driving and continue to drive healthcare performance. Ladies and gents, from us at UKZN, Discipline of Nursing, we thank you once again and we say Happy Nurses Day. Goodbye.